Nestled in the picturesque heart of Pine Ridge, Harbor Grill was more than a restaurant, it was a cherished gathering place. Locals flocked to the cozy eatery for its hearty meals and welcoming atmosphere. From birthday celebrations to casual lunches, the restaurant had become a backdrop to the lives of many in the community. That warm hum of camaraderie filled the air one sunny afternoon as customers filled the booths and tables. Savoring the smells of fresh bread and seared steaks, the restaurant manager, Jason Caldwell, was a man with strong opinions. Known for his rigid leadership style, Jason took pride in running a tight ship and creating what he called an inclusive environment. To Jason, inclusivity meant avoiding anything remotely divisive, even if it meant enforcing his own interpretations of neutrality. As the lunch rush peaked, a new patron walked through the doors, his steps steady and purposeful. Michael Harrington, a 70-year-old retired Marine, carried himself with the quiet dignity of a man who had faced life's harshest trials. His weathered face bore the lines of decades spent serving his country and supporting his family. On his head sat a red hat with bold white lettering, "Make America Great Again." Michael entered the Harbor Grill intending only to enjoy a quiet meal. The hat was more than a political statement to him. It symbolized values he held dear: resilience, freedom, and service. For Michael, wearing the hat was a simple nod to the ideals he had fought to protect during his 2 tours in Vietnam. The hostess greeted him warmly, guiding him to a corner table by the window. Michael settled into his seat, glancing around at the families and friends enjoying their meals. The clatter of silverware and the murmur of conversation created a comforting ambiance. He placed his order with a friendly server and leaned back, appreciating the simplicity of the moment. Unbeknownst to him, Jason Caldwell had taken notice. Jason's gaze zeroed in on the red hat, and his expression hardened. To him, the hat was a symbol of division and intolerance, an affront to the inclusive space he believed Harbor Grill represented. Determined to act, Jason approached Michael's table, his steps brisk and his posture firm. "Sir, we have a policy against political attire," Jason said, his tone clipped. Michael looked up, his calm demeanor unshaken. "I'm just here for a meal," he replied evenly. "I'm not trying to cause any trouble." Jason's stance remained rigid. "That hat makes some of our patrons uncomfortable. I'll have to ask you to remove it or leave." The diners around them began to notice the exchange, their chatter fading into uneasy murmurs. Some glanced at Michael's hat and nodded in agreement with Jason, while others looked away, unsure of what to do. A few took out their phones, discreetly recording the unfolding confrontation. Michael's gaze met Jason's. "This hat is a part of who I am," he said softly. "It's not meant to offend anyone." Jason didn't budge. "I'm sorry, sir, but those are our rules." Realizing he wouldn't be allowed to stay, Michael nodded quietly. He stood, adjusted his hat, and walked out of the restaurant with his head held high. Outside, he paused for a moment to steady himself, taking a deep breath before beginning the walk back to his home. Inside the Harbor Grill, the atmosphere was tense. Jason returned to his duties, satisfied that he had upheld the restaurant's policies. But whispers spread among the patrons. One elderly woman murmured to her companion, "That man didn't deserve that." You can disagree with someone without humiliating them. A younger couple exchanged worried glances, debating whether to say something but ultimately choosing silence. That evening, Michael sat at his dining table with his wife, Eleanor, and their son, Ryan Harrington, a prominent social media influencer known for his advocacy work and fiery passion for justice. Ryan's following had grown to millions, drawn to his unapologetic stance on fairness and equality. As they shared a meal, Ryan noticed his father's uncharacteristic silence. "Dad, how was your day?" he asked. Michael hesitated, cutting into his food. "It was fine," he said, his tone restrained. Eleanor placed a hand on his arm, her eyes filled with concern. "Michael," she said gently, "something happened, didn't it?" With a deep sigh, Michael recounted the incident at the Harbor Grill. His voice was steady, but the hurt was evident. As he spoke, Ryan's jaw tightened, and Eleanor's expression darkened. "They made you leave because of your hat?" Ryan's voice rose in disbelief. "That's outrageous." Michael raised a hand to calm his son. "It's not worth getting upset about," he said. "I've faced worse in my life." But Ryan couldn't let it go. "This isn't about the hat," he said. "It's about respect." They humiliated you. And that's not okay. Eleanor tried to ease the tension. Ryan, your father's right. Sometimes it's better to let things go. Ryan shook his head, his frustration palpable. Maybe you can let it go. But I can't. People need to know this kind of behavior isn't acceptable. The next morning, Ryan woke early, his mind racing. Sitting at his desk, he began recording a video, speaking directly into the camera. His voice was calm but impassioned as he described what had happened to his father. My dad, a 70-year-old Marine veteran who served 2 tours in Vietnam, was turned away from a local restaurant yesterday for wearing a hat. He began, holding up a photo of his father in uniform. Ryan continued, this is the man they disrespected. A man who has given so much for this country. Treated like he didn't belong because someone decided his hat made them uncomfortable. Ryan's voice grew stronger. This isn't just about my dad. It's about every veteran. Every person who has been judged unfairly for expressing their beliefs. We can do better. He ended the video with a call to action. If you believe in respect and dignity, share this. Let's make sure this kind of behavior doesn't go unnoticed. Within hours, the video went viral. Comments flooded in, expressing outrage and support. How can this happen to someone who gave so much for our country? One user wrote. Another added, thank you for speaking out. Ryan, your dad deserves better. News outlets picked up the story, amplifying its reach. The hashtags #RespectVeterans and #StandForDignity trended nationwide. At Harbor Grill, the fallout was immediate. Negative reviews poured in on social media, and cancellations became the norm. Jason Caldwell found himself overwhelmed as the restaurant's reputation crumbled. Employees whispered among themselves, their unease growing as the controversy escalated. Amanda, one of the servers, approached Jason hesitantly. Jason, maybe we should address this, she suggested, showing him Ryan's video. Jason waved her off. This will blow over, he said dismissively. But it didn't. Former employees began sharing their own stories of Jason's confrontational behavior, adding fuel to the fire. A local activist called for boycotts, and veterans groups organized protests outside the restaurant. Despite issuing a public apology, Jason found it impossible to stem the tide of backlash. The restaurant's once bustling dining room became eerily quiet. As the restaurant neared closure, Jason began reflecting on his actions. Late one night, he researched Michael Harrington's life, uncovering articles about his military service and community contributions. He was struck by the profound impact Michael had made, both as a Marine and as a local leader. Overwhelmed with guilt, Jason reached out to Ryan, requesting a meeting with Michael to apologize. Ryan agreed, but only after ensuring Jason's intentions were genuine. Several weeks later, Jason arrived at Michael's home, his heart heavy with regret. Michael welcomed him inside, his expression calm but firm. Sitting across from him in the modest living room, Jason spoke with sincerity. Mr. Harrington, he began, I'm deeply sorry for how I treated you. I let my personal biases cloud my judgment, and I disrespected you in a way that was unacceptable. Michael listened quietly, his gaze steady. When Jason finished, Michael said, I appreciate your apology, but what matters now is what you do moving forward. Jason nodded. I've started making changes at the restaurant and in myself. I know I have a long way to go, but I'm committed to being better. Michael's expression softened. We all make mistakes. What matters is whether we learn from them. Though Harbor Grill ultimately closed, Jason's journey didn't end there. He dedicated himself to community work, volunteering at veterans events and speaking about the importance of respect and humility. His story became a powerful reminder that even the hardest lessons can lead to growth. For Michael Harrington, life returned to its quiet routine. When asked about the incident, he said simply, what matters isn't the mistake, it's what you do afterward. This story reminds us that respect and understanding are responsibilities we owe to one another. How do you balance accountability with forgiveness? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story moved you, don't forget to like and subscribe for more inspiring tales of growth and resilience.